Welcome to Wife Cheating Story. I hope you have an enjoyable and relaxing time listening. Let's get started.
There's an old Chinese saying that goes something like this. May you live in interesting times. At first it seems positive, but really, it means you might face tough situations. I was living through those interesting times. It all began last summer when my wife, Andrea, prepared to leave for a sales conference in Chicago. Before we got married, Andrea worked as a sales consultant for a building supply company. After we became parents for the first time during our honeymoon with our daughter Susie, she took some time off work. Soon after, she took more time off to welcome our son, Mark Jr. Our 7 years together had been full of ups and downs, endless sleepless nights, toddler tantrums, and potty training mixed with laughter, first words, first steps, and lots of hugs. I thought we were a happy family. Mark, honey, can you put my hairdryer in my suitcase? I'm running late. Sure thing, babe, I called back and rushed upstairs to our bedroom. Andrea had returned to work about a year ago. At first, I wasn't sure about her going back. I thought the kids needed her, and we didn't have financial struggles. But Andrea insisted she would work part-time, giving us plenty of family time. I was uncertain, but so far it seemed to be working. The kids were happy. I was happy, and she seemed happy too. Or so I thought. The hairdryer was still plugged in the bathroom. I unplugged it, wrapped the cord, and made my way to Andrea's suitcase. It was a nice, large suitcase we bought when she started going on business trips. It was open on our king-sized bed. You might expect I found something strange that seemed concerning, but that wasn't the case. Andrea is careful and very smart. While trying to put the hairdryer into the suitcase, my hand brushed against a small piece of paper. It was an old receipt. Nothing worrying. It looked like it was a receipt for a soda. No big deal. Except it was in Spanish and showed an address in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. Let me take a moment to introduce myself. I'm Mark Lewis, 41 years old, and I work in insurance. I know what you might think, but before you picture me as one of those people who deny claims or bury themselves in paperwork, let me explain what I do. I'm a field analyst. My company handles workers' compensation claims for major insurers. Basically, I closely observe people to report on their claims and check if issues like back problems are real or possibly exaggerated. There's a bit more to my job than it seems. Some number work, a little psychology, lots of writing reports, and now and then I head to the court to share what I've found. That might make it sound exciting or not. But if you picture me as a private investigator, often sitting in a car collecting information, you'd probably be right. So, as we've already talked about, I don't have any special skills. I'm not a sharpshooter, an ex-soldier, or someone who knows how to break into computers. But I am good at two things: figuring out when people aren't being completely honest with me and keeping a straight face while they do it. I mean, who would willingly share the truth if it could affect their payments? And the stories people come up with when I catch them are often pretty wild. Anyway, back to the receipt. I looked at it for a moment, pocketed it, and then walked downstairs. By the time I reached Andrea in the kitchen, I could tell something was off. You see, we had bought this luggage brand new when Andrea took her first trip just a month after she started her new job. I thought I knew where she had been, and the date on the receipt didn't match up with her previous trips. Andrea heard me coming and turned with a little smile. Her dark hair was tied back in a messy ponytail, and her glasses were sliding down her nose. "Here, honey," she said, handing me a piece of lined paper. "This is the schedule for the kids this week. My mom can help with rides for some activities, but you'll still need to handle drop-off on Thursday and Friday. Are you sure you can manage that every morning?" I smiled back at her. She was such a dedicated mother, and that was one of the things that made me care for her even more over the years. I really needed to stay calm now. "No problem, babe. Don't worry about anything. I'll take care of things while you're away. Just make sure to come back safe." I opened my arms to her, and she stepped into my embrace, looking up at me sweetly. "You're such a wonderful father. I feel so lucky to have you," she said with a smile. I smiled back, but noticed her purse was open on the counter. "I'll get your suitcase for you. Why don't you take a moment before we leave for the airport?" One quirky thing about Andrea is that she always needs to use the restroom before leaving home. After having 2 kids, she's learned to never skip that. My suggestion sent her rushing off. I went to the counter and opened her purse. Inside were 2 novels, sunglasses, gum, keys, a phone, no time for that, her wallet with cash, and her ID. Everything seemed normal, except for one receipt. A passport. I didn't even know she had one. I opened it and looked at the pages. 2 stamps, Mexico and Queensland, Australia. Really? I said a little loudly. I quickly put everything back. Australia? How did I not know my wife went all the way to the other side of the world on a work trip? Was I really that oblivious? Could I have missed any signs? How could she keep this from me? I was shocked, but the sound of water running made me hurry. I dashed upstairs, zipped up her suitcase, and started bringing it down. Seriously, I muttered to myself. Andrea was waiting by the front door, her face hard to read. "Are you okay, honey? You look a bit pale," she said, showing concern. I was surprised at how calm she seemed. I took a deep breath. "Yeah, I'm fine, Andy," I replied, putting the suitcase by the door. Her ride should be here soon. "So," I asked, "where are you staying in Chicago again?" I realized I hadn't asked her many important questions, but to her credit, she quickly responded. "I'm staying at the downtown Marriott and sharing a room with Mags. The room is in her name." Mags was Margaret Fields. Andrea and Mags had gone to college together and now worked at the same company. We hadn't seen much of her since Andrea became a parent, but now that they were both back to work, she had started to become a more annoying part of our lives. To be honest, I had never really liked her. She was loud, direct, and sometimes a bit harsh. Even after getting married a couple of years ago, her attitude hadn't changed. As a low-level investigator, it was easy to see what kind of person Margaret Fields was. Andrea's phone buzzed with a text. She looked at it and said, "My ride is here. Don't forget to pick up the kids from Mom's before 6. Love you." After helping her with her suitcase into the car, I couldn't shake a feeling of unease about the trip. I wondered if the driver was someone important to Andrea. However, the papers on his windshield and his ordinary look suggested he was just a regular driver. I gave Andrea a warm hug, and as she drove away, I rushed back to the house to check online. First, I looked up flights and confirmed there was a flight to Chicago leaving at the time Andrea mentioned. The flight number matched. I also checked international flights around the same time, but that didn't help. She could easily have a connecting flight elsewhere. Next, I checked her social media, Facebook, Instagram, and her email. I searched everything I could find, but nothing seemed strange. There were no suspicious messages, and all her followers were people I recognized. After reviewing everything, I tried to calm my thoughts. The only reason I could think of for Andrea to lie about her trip was if she was involved with someone else. It sounded unlikely, but what other reasons could there be? Was she meeting someone during her travels? Maybe an ex-boyfriend or a co-worker? The idea bothered me as more questions came to mind. I managed to pull myself together. The rush of anxiety had faded, but I still felt uneasy. I had no leads, her laptop and phone were with her. All I knew was that my wife wasn't honest about her travel plans, and that uncertainty made me worry. My cautious nature, shaped by past experiences with dishonesty, made it hard to consider any innocent reasons. I needed to move forward. First, I would pick up the kids. After that, I planned to talk to Andrea's mom to see if she knew anything. I grabbed my car keys and headed to her parents' house. I always liked Andrea's parents. They were down-to-earth and straightforward. Her dad was a friendly retired electrician, and her mom was a caring housewife involved in the church. I didn't think either of them would help Andrea hide anything, but my anxiety and doubt were growing. I tried my best to put on a smile when I picked up the kids. I subtly asked Andrea's mom, Clarice, about the trip, but she didn't know much more than I did. She did mention that she didn't think it was right for a young mother to spend so much time away from her kids for work. I awkwardly agreed with her. It wasn't meant to be like this. She nodded and gave me a reassuring pat. "You're a good husband, Mark. Talk to her when she gets back." Was it just a friendly comment, or did it mean something more? I was starting to second-guess everything. Clarice and her husband, Herb, seemed too ordinary to be involved in anything unusual. But then again, I didn't think Andrea was either. Shows how much I know. That night, I received a call from Andrea. She was doing well, relaxing in her hotel room in Chicago, and was looking forward to spending the next day with Mags out on Lake Michigan. A friend of a friend had a boat. I told her I missed her and loved her. I let her talk to the kids, trying to catch any hints of doubt in her voice. It drove me a bit crazy. The kids and I had a quiet weekend. I went through the usual activities: movie night, a trip to the park, a visit to the play center, McDonald's for dinner, and waffles for breakfast. Everything a kid would enjoy. Maybe I was spoiling them because I felt guilty about the changes I believed were coming to our family life. Unlike Andrea, I had grown up in a broken home and knew the challenges that could bring. It made me feel both sad and resentful. During the week that Andrea was away, I tried to find out more about her story. I called the hotel and was connected to her room. She wasn't there, but she called me back on her cell a few minutes later. It felt suspicious, but it wasn't proof. I invited Frank, Maggie's husband, over for dinner and casually asked him about the trip. What he had heard lined up with what Andrea had told me. I wanted to know about past trips, but to be honest, I hadn't really paid attention to those details before that surprising Friday afternoon, so my questions became more general. I was certainly paying attention now. I even tried to find out more about the event Andrea was supposed to attend, but I realized I hadn't asked about any details, so I didn't know where to begin. By midweek, I knew I had to get some answers from Andrea's work, but I wasn't sure how to do it without letting her know I was suspicious. The lack of progress was stressful. As long as I was focused on finding clues, I could manage the anxiety that had been growing since Andrea left, but without a lead, that anxiety came back strong, making me uneasy. I was feeling desperate, and my patience was wearing thin. I snapped at the kids and glared at my coworkers. I slammed doors in frustration and almost lost my cool during our nightly phone calls. I realized I needed help, so I did something I had promised I wouldn't do. I called my older brother. My relationship with Jake was complicated. We often disagreed on many things. I leaned toward progressive views, while he held more conservative opinions. I believed in recycling and its benefits. He thought it wasted resources. I loved cats, while he was a dog person. My wife was thoughtful and intellectual, while his wife cared more about appearances. You get the idea. He answered the call on the third ring. "Hey, Mark, who died?" I couldn't blame him for asking that. The last time I called him was 4 years ago when Dad passed away. I took a deep breath and said, "My marriage." There was a long silence. He was probably trying to figure out if I was serious. Wow, what's happening? I could feel his concern. We didn't often see eye to eye, but I knew he cared. I had some worries about asking him for help, but he was someone I could trust. I used to think the same about Andrea, but now I wasn't so sure. Jake was the brother who might argue with you over the remote, but would stand by you when things got tough. If I had to sum up our relationship, it would be something like, I can tease him all I want, but if anyone else tries to hurt him, I'll step in. It was a comforting thought. I told him everything. "Mark, you have to be careful. If you just act without thinking, she might pull away even more. I hate to say this, but Andrea is quite clever." I couldn't help but chuckle. It reminded me of who I was dealing with. He was probably trying to get under my skin. "Anyway, you said she's at the Marriott until Sunday morning, then coming back to you?" I confirmed that and added that I talked to her every night. "Video call or just the phone?" he asked. I felt annoyed. "Just the phone, actually." "Have you even tried to call her on video? I bet she's the one calling you every night." It was true. I always waited for her call just before the kids' bedtime. During the day, we only texted. She could be anywhere, and it was easy for her to hide that. I felt silly. I should have thought about it more, but I had trusted her completely. "Let's just get to the point and find out what she's up to," he said. I heard some rustling on his end, then heard him call out, "Mandy, pack your bags. We're heading to Chicago for the weekend." "What? Are you serious?" I said. "Absolutely, little brother. You have young kids and can't leave without raising questions. Ours are teenagers, so we can leave them with Mandy's parents. We know where Andrea is and who she's with. She probably hasn't seen Mandy or me more than a few times. Remember, you'll need to send me a recent picture of her." There was a brief pause as he thought about something. "You remember Grandpa John, right?" "That was our grandfather on our dad's side, John Lewis, a first sergeant, USMC. "Yeah?" I was curious about where he was going with this. "He once told me how he got one of his Purple Hearts. It was in Korea. He was catching rides along the column in the back of passing jeeps. He jumped off one and found himself in a tricky spot. Jake paused for a moment. But the tough spot wasn't what gave him the Purple Heart. The incident didn't even hurt him much. Then what happened? I asked. When he landed, he fell on something sharp. Jake didn't need to say more. I remembered a time when I had been thrown high into the air. I needed to make sure I landed safely. Jake, Lewis, Mandy, and I were sitting at the bar in the downtown Marriott on Chicago's Magnificent Mile. She was enjoying a raspberry margarita, while I was having my usual Kentucky straight bourbon. It was a typical hotel bar, nothing special, recently updated. It felt ordinary and matched what you'd expect from a big chain trying to look nice. My sweet Mandy was chatting with the bartender, a friendly older woman with a nice voice. I wondered why this stretch of hotels and stores was called Magnificent. I was sure Mandy would tell me later. I was also concerned if I had taken on too much. I'm a capable guy and know my own limits. The challenge I face is my need to stay busy. It's probably why I became an engineer. I have to keep my mind busy and engage with what's around me. After hearing about Mark's troubles, I felt I had to help. I quickly planned that Mandy and I would fly to Chicago, find Andrea, and discover the truth. In the back of my mind, I wanted to show my little brother that I wasn't just the older sibling by age, but also smarter, wiser, and better at his job. After all, he had learned about his wife's unfaithfulness only after a long time. I was determined to reveal the truth for him. I knew it was wrong, and I recognized that thinking about these things often made me uneasy. Bad outcomes can happen when I dive too deeply into matters like that not-so-great weekend in San Jose. I've made mistakes in my life and understood where they came from. For my peace of mind, it was better to focus on avoiding the past instead of reliving it. I set my drink down on a worn coaster and looked around the bar. I had a good idea of what Andrea looked like. My brother had sent me some pictures. Mark also mentioned that if Andrea wasn't around, I might need to recognize her friend Maggie, so I had pictures of her too. Still, the chances of me running into either of them by chance seemed quite low. I needed a better plan. The crowd was calm for a Friday night, which I expected. This hotel wasn't known for having a lively bar scene. Most people were busy with their own things, but now and then, someone would lose focus, or a woman would tease her friend with a cheerful gesture. I called it the bimbo effect wherever Mandy was. She drew attention from everyone around, curious or otherwise. She's the only person I know who can make heads turn, and I've seen people accidentally bump into things when she walks by, simply because she has that kind of presence. Mandy is 5'8" and 140 pounds of pure charm. From her blonde hair to her perfectly manicured toenails, everything about her shines. She wears makeup that's always bold and eye-catching. Her long eyelashes and defined lips add to her unique look. She works hard to stay fit and stylish, and her commitment to looking good really shows. Her dedication is why she stands out in any crowd. That's my Mandy. She's been my wife for 17 years, my dream partner, the mother of our 2 lovely daughters. And when we get the chance, we enjoy our special moments together. We have a close bond that we value deeply. I know I won't find another woman who makes such an effort to be my perfect match, and she understands how much closer we become when she supports my vision. From the outside, it may seem like I hold all the power because she is so devoted, but our relationship is truly one of mutual influence. So yes, from the outside, we might appear to be a wealthy man with an elegant wife, but if you looked a little closer, you'd understand the truth. It was pretty evident, especially to those who knew us when we got married and remembered Amanda. Not many people do now, but she has some old photos she sometimes shares. Those pictures always surprised people. Anyway, just think about how hard it is for us to be ourselves while raising 2 teenage daughters. Honestly, I feel like they're just as likely to defy us and choose a different path as they are to take on unique careers like their mom. As I was saying, it was the usual scene. People admiring Mandy. Mandy chatting with anyone around who would listen, while I thought about how to find a solution to the messy situation I'd put myself in. Mandy's voice broke through my thoughts. Jake, do you want to order something to eat? Maybe some appetizers? I think this drink is starting to affect me. Yeah, I guess. What do they have? Her face brightened up, which usually meant trouble because Mandy loved trying new things, and those didn't always go well with food. Well, she started to persuade me. Beatrice says the vegetarian Asian sliders are really, really good. I wasn't happy with where this was going. The word vegetarian made me uneasy. Beatrice? I asked. Oh, the bartender I talked to. She's really nice. Did you know her brother is part of a group that's often in the news for controversial stuff? I almost spilled my drink. What? Mandy, why would I know that? Why would she tell you that? She shrugged, drawing attention from those around us. I think I heard someone gasp. I don't know. We were chatting about where to find good platform shoes in the area, and that was my Mandy. She could talk to anyone and get stories in no time, just like her dad, a car salesman from Florida. Even before she turned into the confident person she is today, she had a way of making friends quickly. I had seen her dad in action, and he was quite the charm, just like her. It made her a talented performer online. She knew how to connect with an audience and keep her cheerful spirit for hours. Wait, Mandy, I interrupted her. A thought was forming in my mind. It was a much better idea than my first plan of pretending to be a delivery person to find out where Maggie Fields and Andrea were staying. It felt smarter than just bribing someone. I smiled and shared my thoughts with Mandy. Thanks to a quiet question from Mandy's new friend Beatrice, we moved to a new room on the 10th floor, just a couple of doors down from Maggie and Andrea. It was Friday night, and I knew Mandy wanted to have some fun, and I did too. But I had promised my brother that I would find out what his wife was up to. I hoped we could figure it out quickly, like in a classic mystery show. Eventually, Mandy and I came up with a plan that seemed good but was a bit impractical. The hallway wrapped around the hotel, and there was a small bench with a vending machine at the corner. Our idea was simple. I ordered a couple of bottles of sparkling white wine, and we settled on the bench for a nice time together. After all, who would really notice a couple having a good time on a Friday night in a hotel? Every now and then we heard the elevator ding or a door opening, which made us stop and see who it was. We both had our phones ready to take a picture if we spotted either Maggie or Andrea, but ultimately it didn't matter. By 11 p.m., we felt pretty carefree and mostly forgot what our plan was. It turned into a funny and enjoyable night. At least the kind staff member who checked on us just directed us back to our rooms instead of asking us to leave, which was a relief. The next day was our last chance to get any real evidence for Mark, so I wisely included my little brother in the plan. It turned out he was quite good at investigating. The plan was simple. He would text me when he was talking to Andrea, and then I would go knock on the door. That's what we did. I had just started to knock loudly when a tall man in his 40s with some gray hair answered the door and asked what I wanted. Behind him, I could see Maggie under the covers, and there was no sign of Andrea. I quickly apologized, saying, "I'm sorry, sir," with a shaky accent. Mandy was a bit behind me, secretly recording with her smartphone. We believed that Andrea wouldn't recognize us, since she hadn't spent much time with either of us, and we had changed our looks quite a bit, but since Maggie had never met us at all, that didn't help. A few minutes later, I got a text from Mark. He hadn't heard a thing. It was very quiet. Mandy Lewis. Hi, Mandy here. Oh my gosh, this has been the strangest and most fun mini vacation Jake and I have had in a long time. This spy adventure is wild. Usually when we go on vacation, we do the usual things like eating, shopping, and relaxing, but having a mission for our vacation is fantastic. I was so excited to try to catch Andrea, and let me tell you, last night's stakeout was so much fun. Sure, we didn't catch anyone, and the plan was a bit silly, but between you and me, I love the excitement of an adventure. Every time we visit a new city or anywhere away from home, I feel so free to be myself. I can dress how I like, act how I like, basically, I can really be me. I love my kids, and they are so patient with me as their mom, but I really need to relax sometimes. Jake understands me. He always has, and even though we try to unwind at home, it's tough to be carefree when we have to be careful. Anyway, I always try to get Jake to let loose when we're on vacation, and he often does. But he's really careful about being adventurous in public. He cares about me and makes sure I stay focused and don't lose control. I appreciate it, but sometimes I just want to be free. Last night, I really felt that freedom. I know that if I can help Jake relax, he will say yes to most fun ideas we have within limits, of course. What I often want is to try new things in public places. A quiet spot, somewhere hidden, you name it. I enjoy the excitement. That's why I love my job. So last night was pretty interesting. I wasn't drinking as much as I pretended to while making sure to keep Jake engaged and prevent him from wanting to leave. It's a tricky balance getting him a bit tipsy enough for a good time, but not so much that he can't enjoy it fully. Thankfully, I found a nice balance last night, and it turned out to be a thrilling experience. After a little hiccup the night before, we met with Mark and came up with a better plan. This was great because it gave us most of the day to do some shopping on the Miracle Mile. I didn't spend too much, but I had to negotiate with my dad in the changing room at Nordstrom to get what I wanted. It was a bit of a give and take. Well, the new plan went smoothly. We found out that Andrea wasn't in Chicago, or at least wasn't sharing a room with her friend Maggie. After that, Jake and Mark talked for a while about another plan, leading us to today. We knew exactly when Andrea's flight from Chicago to Houston was landing, so we arrived at the airport early for our flight. We spent our time drinking coffee, chatting, texting the kids, and using our phones. We settled near the gate for Andrea's return flight. About half an hour before boarding, we saw her friend Maggie arrive with another guy, the same one from the hotel room. They were holding hands and showing affection. No one asked me, but I took some video of them. I know she's married, and that man isn't her husband. I realized I was starting to drift off and wondered if we had time to grab a mocha from Starbucks when Jake nudged me. He probably meant to poke me, but I was distracted. I followed his gaze and softly exclaimed as I raised my phone to record. "That's her, isn't it?" I asked Jake. "Yep, and I don't know who that guy is. He looks a bit older, doesn't he?" I chuckled at that. "Look who's talking," I teased him, thinking about the age difference. Jake is 10 years older than me, and I was just 19 when we got married. Best decision I ever made. "My eyes aren't as good as yours. What does that bag he's carrying say on it?" he asked. I squinted a little, but managed to see it thanks to the LASIK surgery Jake got me for our second anniversary. "Royal Ontario Museum," I replied quietly. Let me check," he said as he looked at his phone. I guessed he was checking flight arrivals. A flight from Toronto arrived about an hour ago. That gives them enough time to go through customs and just about make it here. "I don't understand," I said. "Why all the sneaking around? If she was leaving with someone, why couldn't she leave from Chicago? It just doesn't make sense." I looked at my sister-in-law and the man with her. He was a bit older, had thinning hair and a little belly, standing around 6 feet tall. He was decent-looking but not particularly fit, even if he was a couple of inches taller. They stood close together, and he would occasionally touch her arm, but they didn't seem overly affectionate. "I guess we should head out, or we'll miss our own flight. Can you send those videos to Mark?" I nodded, and we both stood up, holding hands as we walked to our gate. Our flight to Fort Lauderdale was in 40 minutes, so I pushed my worries aside and thought about where I could celebrate with Jake to make our trip more exciting. A girl has to have priorities. Andrea Lewis Hampton Paul was trying to talk to me, but I couldn't hear him over the jumble of thoughts in my head. This was happening to me more often now, especially on this trip. The anxiety, the heavy guilt, like everything was pressing down on me. I felt a mess. Mark, Susie, little Mark. What am I doing? How did I end up here? "The next event will be in Hawaii just like this one, but you'll need to leave earlier because of the time difference. We need you available Friday and Saturday nights for both weekends." Hawaii. That's where Mark and I had our honeymoon. That's where we conceived our daughter Susan. Tears almost came to my eyes. "Hey, Andy, are you listening to me?" Paul touched my arm and I instinctively pulled away. "Yes, just send me the details later." Paul looked at me for a moment. "Look, Andy, you wanted this. You said you needed it." He wasn't lying. I did say that. I really did. He mumbled something quietly. "I'll never understand women like you, confident one moment. Then later, you act like we took away your happiness." He was clearly annoyed, but what he said was true. I didn't have anything to say, so I just stood there wishing it were time for another pill. Eventually, he understood that I wanted to stop talking and walked away. I passed by Mags and John without acknowledging them and stood in front of the large glass window looking out at the runway. A plane was taking off, using its speed to rise into the sky. Oh, how I wished I could be that plane, flying away from the problems I had created in my life. I longed to be a mom again, to be home with my kids, playing games, taking them to the park, and enjoying our time together. I missed waiting for Mark to come home to share the happiness of family life, all of us together on the couch, enjoying each other's company. If I had known then what I know now, I would have never started talking to Paul Jackson again. I wouldn't have gone back to work at RBS. I wouldn't have let down my family and myself like I have. I needed to gather my thoughts, or I would start to crumble while the plane was boarding. I glanced at my watch. It was almost time for another pill. It would help me feel a little less overwhelmed, a little more at ease. I sighed and took a deep breath. I knew I would be all right. These times of change were always tough for me. Sometimes I felt an intense excitement. Other times I felt deep sadness. I never knew what to expect, but once I got on that flight, I could pack away my thoughts and feelings into a sturdy box, big and dark, making it easier not to look too closely at what was inside. I remembered about Hawaii. I knew it was coming up, but I could set it aside for now. I could think about being home with Mark and the kids. I wanted to embrace them, feel their love, and enjoy the safety of home. That was all I ever wanted. That's not entirely true. I wanted more. I really did, but then something unexpected happened. I got it. And now it feels like I can't let go, no matter how hard I try. They're calling my row. I should put on a brave face and get going. I needed to shove everything into that box and hope there's still room to keep it closed for now. Mark Lewis. I was sitting in my favorite armchair. We had found it in the garage when we first moved in, probably left behind by the previous owners, and it looked like it had been around since the 70s. Still, it was comfortable, it reclined, and it was my go-to spot when I needed to think deeply. Today, though, it was very hard to focus. My wife, Andrea. I was unsure about what to do regarding her. I wasn't clear on her actions, at least not completely. I had found out that she had not been honest with me before she left on her latest business trip. My brother and his wife's actions only made me feel more betrayed. It's a strange situation. Sometimes we ignore problems that we can't see, or we trick ourselves into thinking they aren't as serious as they really are. I might have done that if my sister-in-law hadn't sent me those videos from the weekend. Seeing my brother's wife with another man wasn't a huge surprise to me. It might shock Frank if I showed him the video, but I had my suspicions about her. Looking back, I should have tried harder to keep Andrea away from her, but I felt safe because my brother's wife hardly ever visited when Andrea was home with the kids. I didn't think much about what it would mean for Andrea to return to work. As for Andrea, what did I really know? I knew about her business trips, but she hadn't been honest with me about where she was. Many times she misled me and the kids about what she was up to. It was tough to shop in Chicago if you were really in Canada. Now, I had video proof. She and her coworker appeared together at the airport, leaving Chicago for our home in Houston. I spent a long time rewatching that short clip, studying every detail. I wondered, was she wearing her wedding rings? Did they share a smile? Were they close? When he touched her, it seemed like she pulled back a little. Was she surprised? Was there any guilt? The answers I wanted only created more questions. I was good at my job dealing with lies and false records, but this was something completely different. I knew how to find facts, but did I really want to? I looked at my two kids, Susie and Mark Jr., busy with the new coloring books I had bought for them. They were focused, happily coloring away. They had no idea that their world was about to change, and it wasn't their fault. What about me? If I did something, if I uncovered the truth, would it be Andrea or me who would be blamed when our marriage was put to the test? Once I had the video, figuring out who the man with my wife wasn't hard. Paul Jackson, the executive director of sales and marketing at RBS. Technically, he was my wife's boss. According to his LinkedIn, he had been with RBS for almost 20 years. His Facebook showed that he had been married for nearly as long and had 3 kids, likely still living at home. His wife was attractive, stylish, and ironically, I thought she was prettier than Andrea, despite being older. Was Andrea involved with this man? It seemed very possible to me. My heart was telling me to end the confusion and the hurt. "Daddy, I'm hungry." "Me too." I forced a smile for my kids, trying my best to hide how I really felt. "Okay, just a snack for now. We need to pick up your mom from the airport and we can grab some pizza on the way home." The mention of pizza made them very happy. I took a deep breath and moved around the kitchen. We had updated it last year when we started earning more money, and I was still getting used to where Andrea had put away half of our things. The sink looked nice and new, and the kitchen island was a large, smooth piece of wood with a cooktop that had flat buttons like something from a space movie. Andrea loved this kitchen, and I felt good that it made her happy. Now I just wanted to find a plastic plate for some apple slices. I got out a few small red apples and started cutting them. Doing something with my hands slowly helped me feel better. I remembered a trick I learned online last year and turned the slices into bunny shapes for the kids. They enjoyed it, and it was a fun way to get them to like healthy snacks. I wanted to be that kind of dad, so how could I think about changing their lives? I needed to know more. I had to take that next step, even if I didn't want to. I couldn't let the fear of knowing or the anxiety of not knowing tear me apart and change who I was. Once I had more information, then maybe I could decide what to do. But would it be too late by then? One key part of getting a divorce in America is that the law allows for no-fault divorce. But the reality is that women often didn't have to contribute much more than raising children and managing the home without pressure to do more. It was very different from years ago when being a stay-at-home mom meant really working to help the family financially, instead of just finding new ways to spend money. My own mother grew and preserved food, gathered newspapers, cans, and other items to sell for recycling. She bought sturdy clothes and fixed them when we wore them out. When my brother and I grew out of clothes, she found new uses for them. She kept a garden, saved aluminum foil and rubber bands, made her own jams, traded coupons with neighbors, and even earned some money by baking cakes. Plus, she still had time to care for my brother and me, patch up our scrapes, comfort us, clean our faces, and help us with homework. She was, if not more important than Dad, just as important. And when Dad left, she became our whole world. Sure, things have changed since my parents' time. I understood that, but could I say Andrea was just as good a mother as mine, even with the changes in society? A woman who left her children in someone else's care while she went to work? A woman who put her children's safety at risk by being dishonest with her trusting husband? It was clear to me that Andrea was not a good wife, but could she also be seen as a bad mother? This made me think of my sister-in-law. I was probably one of the few who remembered how Amanda used to be. I met her when I was in college, and she seemed nice, but not at all like the type my brother usually dated. Over the years, I watched her change in many ways. I shook my head. Yes, Amanda had changed a lot, but she also influenced my brother. He grew up, becoming more serious and focused on family. The man who once treated every girlfriend as if they were the same actually cherished Amanda from the very start. He understood something I couldn't see. What stayed with me was that even though my sister-in-law chose a career some might not like, she had always been there for her kids. She never worked outside the home. She did school drop-offs and pickups, attended sports days, and cooked meals every night. Her commitment to her family was unquestionable. She was a living contradiction to what I once believed was right or wrong. I had to admit that during most of my marriage I felt better than my brother because of Andrea. Sure, she wasn't as glamorous as Amanda, but she was real. She was honest, loyal, and dedicated. I couldn't understand how Jake could trust a woman like Andrea who seemed to seek attention. He must have felt confused. Oh, how things had changed. I walked back to the living room and placed a plate of treats in front of my kids. They smiled and started playing with them, showing one another their favorites. That warm moment touched my heart. I would miss being with them every day, but it felt like that was the only future ahead. I doubted that once I confronted Andrea with what I knew, either of us would want to stay married. As I settled into my recliner, I suddenly recalled the advice Jake had given me on the night I called him. Don't fall on your bayonet. Andrea had thrown me and our marriage into chaos, and I still felt lost in thought. I knew that eventually, like everything else, the highs come down. But I had a choice, didn't I? I could decide how I would cope with this. I could choose to face the situation directly. One of the things I did this week was spend a lot of time learning about family law in Texas. I knew I could claim wrongdoing in my marriage, and while it might not mean much for dividing our belongings, it was still important depending on the situation. I realized I didn't need pictures as proof family court had different rules than criminal court. Documents like receipts, statements from people, emails, and texts could help my case. but I probably needed more proof than what I had now. I could collect it, though. But what about splitting our things and who would take care of the children? I decided that money wasn't my main worry. I could sell the house, share everything fairly, and still have chances to earn more later. If the decision went my way, I might not even have to give direct support to Andrea. After all, she had a job and could work more hours. I didn't mind paying child support. Those were my children, and as long as the money was spent on them, I was okay with that. Custody was a big concern, though. Right now, it looked like Andrea would get primary care of the kids. There was still a belief that women were better at taking care of children than men, even fathers. On a practical note, Andrea worked fewer hours than I did. She could easily claim that she spent more time with the kids, even if some of that time was spent on her phone or talking to others. Maybe I was worrying too much, but the point is still important. How good of a mother she is doesn't matter much unless it's very concerning. I didn't think that was likely to happen where we were right now. But what about tomorrow? Or a month from now? What would things look like then? If I did nothing and stayed on this path, whether we divorced today or in a year wouldn't change much. Unless I took steps to change it. I checked the time. We had 2 hours until we needed to pick up Andrea from the airport, and an idea was forming in my mind. I needed to make some big changes and take the risk of creating some distance between myself and my wife, something I had been too afraid to do before. It's true that most people, when they are comfortable, are scared to make big shifts, especially with their partners. As long as things seem fine, many tolerate a lot of neglect in other areas. I think that's a weakness, but I was determined to overcome it. Right now, Andrea had the upper hand. She seemed to have all the power while I felt uncertain. This was the current state of our marriage, but I was set on changing it, leveling the playing field, and shifting the balance in my favor. It would take time and a lot of help from friends and maybe even experts, but a long-term plan was starting to come together. By this time next year, I hoped to be ready to make a suggestion to Andrea, a suggestion that she might not like, a suggestion to ensure the best for me and the kids. My wife had become distant from her family, and now it was my turn to handle things. It would have to be a gentle approach, and she wouldn't see it coming. Let the changes begin. I felt so down that anyone passing by would think a storm was above my head. I walked with my hands deep in my pockets, shoulders slumped, and my feet dragging along the sidewalk. I was angry. I had just spoken with the top family law firm in the city, and their view matched my own thoughts almost perfectly. If I divorced Andrea, no matter the reasons, I worried about losing time with my kids. There was no way around it. She was their main caregiver, and since I worked longer hours than she did to support our family, my chances of getting primary custody seemed slim. This reality weighed on me, especially with the stress of pretending to be an unaware husband for the past week. But I had one advantage. My job investigating fraud for an insurance company had taught me to stay calm and keep my feelings in check when needed. Still, the situation with my wife was pushing my limits. I was close to confronting her, which felt risky since I didn't have proof. Going for a divorce now could risk my chances of seeing my kids more often. A meeting with a lawyer had only strengthened that worry. Feeling heavy-hearted, just as I was about to step into a muddy puddle, I suddenly had a realization in a surprising way. I looked up and saw a billboard that said, "DUI? Insurance problems? Custody issues? Let Jose help. Jose Goldstein is on your side." The words of the ad usually wouldn't catch my eye, but the man in the picture grabbed my attention. His mismatched suit and the way he stood suggested he might be someone who could help. My instincts from dealing with tough situations told me he could be useful. I took out my phone and called him. Within 30 minutes, I found myself in front of him, and he didn't seem happy to see me. "So, Mark," he started, looking a bit uneasy. "You investigate insurance fraud for a living?" I nodded. "Don't worry, Mr. Goldstein. I'm not here about one of your clients. I just need good advice, and I'm willing to pay for it." My honesty seemed to make him relax a bit, and he leaned back in his chair, absent-mindedly playing with a pen. He still seemed doubtful. "I'll pay you double your hourly rate." This got his attention. "Okay, then," he said, looking more interested. "What do you need? Are you looking to hire me for your divorce?" I shook my head. "Not exactly. To be honest, I'm not sure. I want to keep you on for general advice. If you were in my shoes, how would you handle this?" This sparked his interest. and I noticed a small smile appear on his face. I spent the next 15 minutes sharing what I knew, what I suspected, and the advice I had received from the best family lawyer in the city. He listened closely, and I could see him thinking behind his professional demeanor. "So, you don't have any solid proof?" he asked after a pause. "Not really. Just some hints at most. I know about her trips and that she wasn't where she claimed to be. I also know she arrived at the airport with her boss, that's all. But from what I hear, it's not a big deal in divorce cases, even if you claim misconduct." Jose nodded. "That's true. Most courts don't focus on that. Sometimes you might find someone who could help a little if you had strong proof, but that's not the main point here." I was curious and encouraged him to keep talking. "First, we don't know what she's doing. She might be involved in something shady, maybe even something illegal. You mentioned she went to Mexico. What if her trips weren't just for fun? There are many possibilities." I pressed for more details. "And what does that mean for me?" "Not much right now, but if you gathered some strong hints and shared those with the authorities, it could change things." I couldn't help but chuckle at that. "Only if she's really doing something wrong," I replied. Jose shrugged. "Mistakes happen in investigations all the time, and the saying goes that if something seems off, it probably needs a closer look." I saw where he was headed. "Jose, I'm understandably upset right now, but I don't think setting her up for something like that is the answer." He laughed heartily, clearly amused. "Mark, I'm a lawyer, and I'm not saying you should set anyone up. I'm just saying that if you have any hints about her activities, you could quietly share some of it with the authorities." I nodded, picking up on his meaning. Some of the hints. Only the parts I was okay with them seeing, so they could make their own decisions. My gut feeling about Jose was proving to be right. "Anyway," he shifted the conversation, "the main thing is that the more you know, the more choices you have. And even if she's involved in something else, knowing that could be useful for you. Family court might not care, but she could act differently, especially if you have proof." I laughed, realizing there was a deeper meaning in what he said. "You asked how I would handle it? Well, the first thing I would do is gather more information, any way I can. It doesn't matter if it can be used in court. Just knowing what's really happening gives you many choices. You should think about that." He made a valid point. Right now, the uncertainty was wearing me down, and while it might be hard to face, knowing was better. It gave me choices, as he said. He was right. The second thing. "Mark, do you like your job?" he asked. I shrugged. "I'm good at it. I guess I like it. Why? Should I quit?" Jose got up and went to the coffee maker in the corner. "Want a cup?" he asked. "Black, 2 sugars," I replied. He nodded. There was a moment of silence before he spoke again. "Let me put it this way. Is it possible for you to move up in your career with more schooling? I don't know much about your field, but how do you get into management where you work?" I wasn't sure. I thought about it and said, "Maybe. Something like an MBA or a master's degree." "Why?" Jose nodded wisely as he poured the coffee and added the sugars, stirring it gently. "Well, there are many benefits to continuing your education. You could advance in your career, support your family better, learn more, and become a more complete person. Some people, probably many, go to school part-time for this, but don't you think that takes too long? If it were me, I'd want to finish it quickly so I could start earning more money." It was like a light bulb lit up in my mind. He was hinting that I should go back to school full-time and even consider a pay cut. He kept talking. "Of course, school costs money. Do you have any savings? Enough to cover, say, 2 years if necessary, along with tuition?" Jose handed me the cup and sat back down. I stared at the dark liquid, thinking deeply. I could take out loans. Jose coughed, looking unhappy. "I mean, I could probably pay for it with our savings?" He smiled at me. "Did you know that sometimes you can pay for all your education up front?" That light bulb was shining brightly now. Jose was suggesting that if I used some of those savings for school, no one could take it from me. He was very wise. I took a sip of the coffee. It was strong and a bit burnt. The sugar didn't really improve the taste. I placed the mug on his desk and shared my idea. If I go back to school for a master's, I would have more time with my kids and a flexible schedule, right? The way Jose looked at me made me feel like I was the best student in a special school. But Mark, if you go back to school, how will you pay the bills? Could your wife work more hours? His question made me uneasy. Part of me felt it wasn't right for Andrea to work even more, but the part of me that wanted to win custody of our kids saw the benefits of her working longer. First, it would help balance the money situation and might mean Andrea could help me instead. Second, I could take on more responsibility for our kids since she would be busy with work while I studied. Jose leaned back and took a sip of his coffee. There's one thing to consider. Mark, Texas is a community property state. This means your degree, if you earn it, could be seen as shared property. You might have to cover some of the costs later. I laughed out loud, thinking it was silly. Wait, then why did you? Jose raised his hand. I said could be, that's all. It rarely happens, and usually only when one spouse clearly used the other for school costs. That's why I keep saying you need to know more. If you can show Andrea was unfaithful, you could use that in a divorce. You have been a caring husband and supported her through 2 pregnancies and part-time work, so isn't it fair that she supports you now while you study? You might still be together if things were different. Jose stood up when he said that last part, hands on his desk. He smirked and then sat back down. He knew how to make a point, and I was starting to understand his reasoning. I realized I had been avoiding the truth about what Andrea was doing. Maybe I didn't want to know. However, if I wanted to end this marriage on my terms, I had to confront the truth, no matter what it was. You've given me a lot to think about, I told Jose as I started to get up. He stood too and reached out to shake my hand. Just one more thing, Mr. Lewis. This is something any lawyer would advise you about when thinking of a custody plan. Keep records. Records of everything. Every time I picked up the kids from school, dropped them off, spent quiet nights with them, went to dental appointments, attended soccer practice, or met with teachers without my wife every single moment. I needed to keep a record of it all in a notebook. If my wife did something, that should go in there too. This way, it would feel more natural, less like a plan. He let go of my hand, and I almost wiped it on my pants. Jose had really done a good job. He had shown me a simple but effective plan on how to handle the challenges my upcoming divorce would bring and how it might affect my kids. I found myself starting to appreciate his advice. After a few friendly words and paying with my credit card, I felt lighter as I drove home. I planned to talk to my boss tomorrow about my future. I liked that word, future. I was finally starting to see one for myself. I knew I had to keep my hopes realistic. There was a lot to do, and I needed to do it well, or it would all amount to nothing, just like my marriage. Andrea Lewis Hampton. I sat alone in the break room, thinking about how my life had turned so difficult. My fingers absent-mindedly twisted my wedding rings while I held a cup of cold coffee. Somewhere in there, I felt there was a deeper meaning, but I was too distracted to find it. The medications I was taking were affecting me more than I wanted to admit. I didn't like depending on them, but I knew I needed them to cope. Otherwise, I would go crazy with everything going on in my life. It all began with a misunderstanding so deep that I had carried it from childhood. Looking back now, it seems silly to think I believed it, but like many people my age, I had grown up with impossible expectations from society, the media, schools, friends, and sometimes even family. I need to be happy. Not, I want to be happy, or I would like to be happy, but I need it. Happiness was always the measure of success for my generation and those before me. Are you happy with your job? Are you happy with your partner? Are you happy with your weight? How about your clothes? Does your home meet your needs? What's wrong if you're not happy? I didn't realize until I had run out of happiness in my own life how short-lived and shallow it all was. Happiness wasn't something that lasted all the time. It was a reward for hard work, making good choices, and doing the right things. My kids didn't give me happiness. Rather, they made my life worthwhile. My marriage didn't bring me happiness. Instead, it was my marriage and family that made me feel complete and valuable. Looking back now, it seems so clear, but at the time I was just like many others, running around trying to find joy. I believe now that people aren't meant to be happy all the time. It's really hard for anyone to always feel joy. Even those with a lot of money can feel sad sometimes. This was my misunderstanding. It led me to make choices that brought me to where I am now, realizing I had traded my sense of value for short moments of joy that left me feeling empty when they passed. This realization didn't come to me recently, but it weighed heavily on my mind over the past few weeks. It all began when I returned from my last business trip. Usually, when I arrive home, Mark is happy to see me, but this time, he felt distant. I'm embarrassed to say that my first reaction was to feel upset. I needed that welcoming moment from my husband and kids. It was what kept me balanced and helped me feel like myself, separate from my work life. This reflects my issues with happiness. My priorities were mixed up. Instead of caring about how Mark felt, I focused on my need for emotional support, feeling let down if I didn't receive it. I had just spent the last few days working hard for my career. That might seem like a big deal, but honestly, it was a struggle to get there. I had received a nice bonus for finishing a tough job. While I had mixed feelings about my choices leading up to that success, I wanted to feel happy deep down. Being a stay-at-home mom is tough, not really in a physical way, but emotionally. There can be feelings of loneliness and worthlessness when spending all day on household tasks. As a feminist, I've always supported the right to choose, but there are hidden expectations that come with that, like trying to meet the ideal of being a good feminist. In our society, good feminists aren't usually the ones who have dinner ready for their husbands after work. So even though I felt fulfilled, I was also working hard and I wasn't always happy. And that's a problem, right? We often define our lives by how happy we feel in each moment, or at least that's what I was taught. I asked Mark if I could go back to work, even though I had promised to wait until the kids were older. I shared my feelings of unhappiness, and being the caring husband that he is, he put my needs first, just as I always had for him. This was the first mistake in my journey of choices based on a poor understanding of life. Next came my second mistake, going back to work with Mags. I am not trying to avoid my guilt, but I must admit that Margaret was a bad influence on me. There was something really interesting about her. From the moment we met as college roommates, I was drawn to her lively spirit. She had a love for life and chased after happiness without thinking about the consequences. She was the picture of a strong, independent woman who went after what she wanted, no matter how it affected others. Looking back, I was glad she mostly stayed away while I was at home with the kids. I would have struggled more as a mother, but when I returned to work at RBS, we soon started having lunch together every day I worked. Within 2 weeks, I was joining her for monthly outings with friends. A month later, those outings became weekly, and she shared stories about her life. It was surprising. I was shocked, but deep down I felt a bit of envy. She seemed so free and full of life. The admiration I had for her back in school came rushing back. She appeared to have everything she wanted and always wanted more. Meanwhile, I was just a mother dealing with some extra weight, balancing a part-time job to avoid facing the tough reality of parenting. The hard truth was that my dreams of being amazing were unlikely to happen. Yet for some reason I began to believe that Mags could have it all. She seemed so powerful to me. The story of my downward path, or at least the first step on that journey, isn't particularly thrilling. We were out of town for a sales meeting, my first one since returning to work. This meeting felt especially significant because our boss, Paul Jackson, was present. He was a charming man, a bit out of shape, but well put together, and he had the air of a successful salesman. He had chosen Mags and me for the trip because we understood the product line that the clients were interested in better than most. Looking back, I see it was all set up, but I went along with it happily. I was glad to be seen for more than just my usual tasks. Paul was smart. He let Mags handle most of the client interactions. We took the clients out to dinner every night during that trip. On the first night, they all went to a club, but I returned to my room, being the responsible employee I was. The next day at lunch, Mags shared her stories, and I couldn't help but smile. Mags, is this really okay? What if Frank finds out about this? She smiled at me in a way that seemed to say, "Oh, you innocent one." I found her confidence hard to understand. "Honey, how is he going to find out?" "This is great. We are far from home. We don't know anyone, and no one knows us. There's no chance this will get back to him." I shared my doubts, and she comforted me. "Look, Andy, I'm not saying you should make bad choices, but what harm can a little fun do?" It turned out that quite a bit could happen. On the second night after I said goodnight to Mark, I went out with the group. I had a wonderful time. There were some iffy moments, but nothing too serious. Mags was right, letting loose felt important and made me happy. On the third night, I got a bit carried away again and ended up in a playful moment with one of the clients and with Mags. It started as a light joke, remembering our college days when we used to entertain the boys. But that night I didn't realize I was getting too caught up until I found myself in an unexpected situation. In a brief moment of clarity, I saw the possibility of trouble, but I didn't care. I told myself it was not that bad, since I hadn't really crossed any lines. On the last night of the trip, we acted a bit recklessly before heading back. Wow, did you see how much attention Trent was giving you? He is definitely interested. I laughed and tried to shake off the playful vibes. It felt a bit hypocritical for me, considering how I always talked about boundaries. But honestly, I enjoyed feeling free. By the end of that evening, I found myself in a tricky situation that I would think about later. I remember Mags giving the driver $100 in cash as we arrived at the hotel. That should have been my first clue about how misguided I really was, but I was still feeling good and a bit tipsy. It didn't register until later, the next week, when Paul Jackson called me to his office. He asked me to sit down and then turned his computer screen toward me. If I could have shrunk down in that chair and disappeared, I would have. "So, Andrea, is this how we act here at RBS?" he asked while a video played on the screen. I was in shock. How did Paul get this video? Who recorded it? Was it Trent? Why would he share it? Then I realized it wasn't Trent, it was Mags. She had set me up and I couldn't understand why she would do that. "Here, take this." Paul slid something across the desk toward me. "Am I getting fired?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Paul laughed and stopped the video. "Look, right here," he said, pointing to the paper in front of me. I slowly gained my composure and stared at something that shocked me even more. "You and Mags make a great team. That's your share of the sales bonus. Keep it up." I don't even remember how I got back to my desk that day. I just sat there until 5 p.m. staring at the largest check I had ever seen, $5,000, and all I had to do to earn it was compromise my values. I had been very naive, but I understood what it meant perfectly. I realized that Paul and Mags had tricked me, and there wasn't much I could do. If Mark ever saw that video, he would likely end our marriage. I understood how my husband was, and I knew that staying quiet was my best chance if I wanted to stay married. Looking back, I wish I had gone home and told Mark the truth. We might have been divorced by now, but at least I wouldn't feel this heavy weight on my shoulders. I might not even need the medication I took to cope with the constant worry I felt, but I didn't tell him. Instead, I went along with my so-called best friend, the same person who had encouraged me to do things I now regretted. My coffee had gone cold, so I poured it down the sink and put the cup in the dishwasher. It was a simple, everyday task in a life that felt far too complicated. I then headed back to my cubicle to share the good news about my latest meeting with Paul. It all started one lazy Sunday afternoon the previous week when Mark nearly made me panic. "Honey, we need to talk." Oh, those infamous 5 words. When I heard them, it took everything in me to stay calm and sit down on the couch across from Mark's green recliner. "Is something wrong?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Mark shook his head. "I quit my job today. I'm going back to school." Usually, I would have erupted at such big news after not being asked, but honestly, I was relieved he didn't say something hurtful. All I managed to say was, "What? How? When?" Mark reached to take my hand, but I flinched. There was something in his expression that I couldn't identify, but I chose to ignore it. I was upset, after all. "Honey, I really don't like my job." Did I know that? Had Mark ever mentioned how he felt about work? Had we even talked lately? Deep down, I wanted to believe that was true, so I took his words at face value. "But how will we manage? What will you study? How long will it take?" I had a million questions, but Mark jumped in with his excitement. "I'm going for an MBA. It will take 2 years if I go full-time, maybe less if I take summer classes. It's at a local business college, focusing on insurance and risk management." He stood up and started to pace. I could feel his excitement fill the room. "You know, I feel stuck at my job right now. There's no path for me to grow. We're still young and the kids are too. Just 2 years, Andy. That's it." After 2 years, I can return to working full-time and start moving up in my career. Just think about it. We would be in a much better place soon. I knew Mark's current position didn't have much of a future. He was also frustrated with the people he dealt with because they often weren't honest. Isn't that ironic? Still, I was unsure how we would manage the sudden need for change. But Mark, how will we pay for this? How will we get by? I only work part-time right now. Honestly, I felt okay about that for various reasons. Mark turned to look at me sharply. I could tell I had said something that upset him. The excitement in his voice faded, replaced by a cooler tone. Andy, he started, do you remember how many years I worked hard as the sole provider while you stayed home with the kids? Did you hear me complain about it? Did I ever say we couldn't afford it? A year ago, I would have jumped up and expressed my anger about how his decisions felt unfair and how we needed to communicate about big changes. I would have argued that we shouldn't take each other for granted. But that person was gone. I had made many mistakes I was not proud of. And now, facing my husband's irritation, I couldn't bring myself to argue more. So, I decided to let it go. This led to today, the meeting with Paul Jackson just half an hour ago when I asked for a full-time job. Andrea, this is a surprise. Paul looked genuinely taken aback by my request. He knew I had been struggling with how I had been earning my bonuses lately. While I had worked with the team, there was a heavy weight on me. It wasn't as if I had much choice. What brought this on? He asked, a slight smile forming. My husband is going back to school and I need more hours here in the office, that's all. Paul smiled and leaned back in his chair. I see you haven't been sharing your bonus checks with him? How could I? I had received a good amount from my last trip, but there was no way I could just deposit that money without a reasonable explanation. Mark worked in fraud investigation, and I knew I couldn't hide the origin of that money from him. That's why I needed more hours to ensure my paychecks showed up in our bank statement for tax time. Paul seemed to understand, so I stayed quiet. There was a brief pause before Paul stood up and walked around me, studying my reaction. I felt a tension in the air, and my stomach, already uneasy, flipped. You might be surprised by how many PTA moms actually thought she was quite impressive over the years, especially after realizing she wasn't interested in their husbands. I was about to ask Mandy more about the project brief when my phone started playing Green Day's Basket Case. You know he won't be happy if he ever finds out that's your ringtone for him. I chuckled and answered the call. Hey, Mark, have you learned anything about Andrea yet? It had been 3 months since our last attempt to gather information in Chicago. We hadn't gained any insights, but Mark had been working on his plan to deal with her since then. I could almost hear Mark sighing through the phone. No, not yet. She's very careful. Plus, she often gives me wrong information about where she's going. I understood how this could be a challenge. That's kind of ironic you can't confront her about her lies, or she might figure out what's happening and ruin your plan, right? As I understood it, Mark's plan was to arrange a smooth divorce and get custody of the kids. He had quit his job to encourage Andrea to go back to work full-time, spending his days studying or taking care of the children. Exactly. I need to keep my doubts to myself until I'm ready to act, or else everything could fall apart. I got it. Judges usually don't appreciate people trying to manipulate situations. Should you even be talking about this on the phone? I asked. I'm using an encrypted IP phone, and I check for listening devices regularly. With each conversation, this seemed more serious. Mark was naturally cautious, but the thought of Andrea bugging their house seemed unlikely. Maybe you should think about hiring a private investigator. I can cover the cost. I know you'll pay me back later. There was a long pause. I know I should. But what if they get caught? There seems to be more going on here more than just Andrea being unfaithful. I think there's another business involved somehow. I could tell my brother was feeling down. He was usually very confident. Isn't this just a workplace issue? Your wife being involved with her boss or a coworker? Mark's voice dropped to almost a whisper, as if he didn't fully trust the call's privacy. I found a large amount of money, Jake. I was very interested now. I had to ask, how much are we talking about? $250,000 in a secret account Andrea has hidden from me. To say I was shocked would be an understatement. I did well for myself. My business was successful, and my wife's income was higher than many doctors or lawyers. The point was, we were doing well. We still didn't have $250,000 saved up. What do you think this is? Is it illegal? This could be. This could be. I struggled to find the right words. Big, Mark said. I nodded. Yes, big. Have you thought about going to the police? Mark sighed again. I can't. What if they can't charge her with anything? Then Andrea will know I'm onto her and all my plans will fall apart. I need something to move things forward. That's why I called you today. I need a favor. Mandy had been listening and spoke before I could. Don't worry, Mark. We've got your back. She had that excited look in her eyes again, the kind that promised fun and a bit of mischief. She had enjoyed getting involved the last time we played detective. I just rolled my eyes. So, where are we going this time? Mandy and I spent another half hour on the phone with Mark discussing his plan before I had to jump on a video call with a customer. Mandy's customer would have to wait until tomorrow since the videographer was busy. In the end, we created a slightly better plan than we had before, thanks to Mark having more information and being more prepared. Do you think we can make this work, honey? Mandy asked me, her excitement clear. I was less optimistic about our chances. Look, I don't know I'd say we have a 50-50th chance of success. Mandy stuck her tongue out playfully and giggled. She knew I was just being a bit difficult. Honestly, I felt we could succeed. Mark had set things up pretty well. I just needed to provide the money and do some work, and it should be easy to get what we needed, at least if I could keep Mandy from getting too caught up in the details. Mandy was rummaging through her closet looking for swimwear. She held up a very small black swimsuit it hardly seemed to cover much. I watched her with a smile, imagining her enjoying the beach in that outfit. At least there would be some fun in our little trip to Hawaii. Mark Lewis, I ended the call and cleared the call history. There were a couple of good things that came from the troubles in my marriage. First was the extra time I spent with my kids, and second was reconnecting with my older brother. To be honest, I don't think we had ever been this close, which was a shame. Siblings often don't realize what matters until life pushes us to change. I regretted the years we had spent apart, but maybe it was necessary. Maybe we just needed to grow in different ways. I didn't know the answer, but I was thankful to have someone I could trust with me. The kids were asleep in their rooms, the lights were off, and Andrea was supposed to be in Dallas for work that night. I opened another window on my laptop and checked the GPS for her car, purse, and phone. The locations were almost the same. She hadn't left the Houston area at all. I figured the travel time gave her more chances to do whatever she wanted tonight. I sighed and rubbed my eyes. For what felt like the 100th time, I thought about getting a babysitter for the kids and going to talk to Andrea. Ever since I started tracking her with the GPS, the urge to confront her was hard to resist. I had to keep reminding myself that now wasn't the right time. I needed to wait for the perfect moment to reveal my plans, hoping it would be too late for her or anyone else to interfere. I took out my journal and wrote that I stayed home with the kids while Andrea was at her meeting in Dallas. Jose had suggested keeping a simple pen and paper record because it would look more genuine over time. As I wrote the date, I realized it had been a little over 3 months since Chicago, and since I started my plan. I had made some progress, but there were still many challenges ahead. School was going well. I had started a part-time job in a computer lab on campus. It gave me time to study and showed that I was trying to help support the family. This was another idea from Jose, and it could help if Andrea's lawyers ever tried to challenge me about tuition fees. I met many fellow students there, most of them much younger than me, but sometimes an older student would notice me and smile, sharing a silent bond. That was nice. What was also nice was the time I got to spend with Susie and Junior. I hadn't realized how much of their lives I was missing by working full-time. I knew these years were important for them, but it wasn't until I watched them nearly every day that I saw just how quickly they were growing. It filled me with some sadness. I hadn't been around for them when I should have been, and now that I was, their happy moments felt all too brief. I can't believe her, I mumbled to myself. No more Andy or Honey or Darling. Ever since I discovered her hidden bank account, she was just Andrea. I felt a lot of frustration inside me, But I was glad that our new schedules kept us from seeing each other too much. It helped keep things from getting too tense, although there were moments when it almost did. Just last week, something happened that made me realize how distant Andrea and I had become since our time in Chicago. I saw our relationship change from what I thought was normal for parents with young kids to something else. To be honest, we had lost a lot of our closeness in the past few months. When we last met, I was upset, and my feelings got the better of me. I acted out, which only made things more confusing between us. I reacted without thinking, letting my frustrations take control. After it was over, as the tension eased, Andrea looked at me with surprise and concern. I wondered if she suspected I knew something about her secret. I could only guess what was on her mind, because she didn't say anything, she just turned away. I felt awful for nearly ruining everything over a moment of anger. The next day, I wanted to apologize and explain myself, hoping to fix the rift that had formed. At least she didn't scold me for what I did. The rest of the week was tough as I tried to show her that I still cared. I brought her flowers and apologized for my earlier behavior, hoping to reconnect in a real way. It was a tricky situation, one I had created, so I had to deal with it. Surprisingly, it seemed to be working. She mentioned wanting to have a special weekend together before her trip, a trip where she would probably meet her new boss, Paul Jackson. Part of my plan had always included encouraging Andrea to go back to work full-time. This seemed like a smart choice to me. It could help lessen the need for alimony and also gave me a chance to be the main caregiver for our children. My hope was that if we ever went to court for divorce, I could get full custody. I knew it wouldn't be easy, even with time and proof on my side, but I was determined to give myself and my kids the best chance. Yet, believing she was seeing Paul Jackson and having proof of it were two very different things. Andrea was smart. She didn't use emails, texts, or calls to set up meetings. They seemed to talk in person at work. My recent attempts to gather information had mixed results. I had bought a voice recorder and hidden it in her purse. While it worked, the sound quality was poor, making it hard to catch what was said. Tonight, I was trying out a better model. I just needed to grab it from her bag and hope for the best. Maybe this time I would find something helpful or at least a clue about her plans. I was also curious about the large amount of money she seemed to have in the bank that she kept secret from me. That money didn't make sense. There was no way she could have $250,000 saved from her job in sales after less than a year. She sold building supplies, not luxury items. There must be more going on. I started to think maybe I had misread the situation. Perhaps Andrea wasn't seeing anyone else. Maybe she was involved in something more serious, like questionable actions with money. Wouldn't that be something? I thought. My wife involved in something wrong. Stranger things have happened. I needed to find out for sure, and even if my recorder didn't catch anything this time, it might be useful later. If that didn't work, I had other ideas for getting information about her, especially during her trip to Hawaii. While Andrea might be able to trick me, GPS would reliably track her location. I turned off my computer and went to make myself a drink. Andrea was still pretending to be a good wife, so she would be home before midnight. She would likely say she took the 10 p.m. flight from Dallas, arrived here after 11, and then drove home. All lies, of course. She was at some condo downtown, just 20 minutes away. The extra time she claimed would be used for betraying our marriage. So many lies, so many tricks, and I had to act like I knew nothing. The only thing that made this bearable was my own plan for deception. One that would be so big, the outcome would be hard to miss. Jake Lewis. I was sipping a bourbon at this pricey Hawaiian resort bar, $12 a drink. If you can believe it, when Mandy skipped over, looking like she was on a mission. In a pink dress that hugged her figure and wearing high heels, her blonde hair bounced like she was in a commercial. "Ready for some fun?" she said with a wink. I finished my drink and rolled my eyes. She was all set, the way that made her popular online. Underneath all that charm, she's competitive. I've seen her handle enough situations, always smiling and playful. She's both the best kind of friend and the worst, if you catch my drift. Let's go. I set my drink down and followed her close, but not too close. We had a plan for the night that I thought might work. Better than when Mark got me into this mess months ago. We didn't handle that situation well. We barely remembered what we were there for. In the end, it didn't matter Andrea wasn't even in Chicago, which somewhat confirmed Mark's doubts but didn't give him the clear proof he wanted. We left the casual bar, crossed the hotel lobby, and entered the event area. Both of us spotted our target at the same time. Paul, Andrea's boss. We exchanged a knowing look, one that only long-married couples would understand, and I stepped back to stay out of sight while Mandy took charge. It's hard to describe how my wife affects people unless you see it firsthand. Imagine a mix of a stunning partner and a natural performer, easily catching everyone's attention. People often react in the same way, eyes wide, partners nudging each other, phones appearing, and some forgetting to be polite as they start to record the scene. It's like they can't believe what they're seeing. Moments like this don't happen every day. Women like her feel like a fantasy, and in a way, they are right, but that's a deeper thought. Anyway, just as I expected, the scene unfolded like clockwork. Even after witnessing it many times before, it's still funny to watch a room full of people trying to figure out what's happening. Paul was no different. He saw Mandy coming toward the bar and looked surprised. This was why we were here. A couple of months ago, my brother Mark had asked for our help, and the three of us made a rough plan. Andrea mentioned she was going to a sales conference in Hawaii. It was somewhat true if you looked at it from a certain angle, but there was much she wasn't saying. Mark had followed her and found a large amount of money, almost $250,000 she shouldn't have. Now he needed us to talk to her about it. Paul Jackson, Andrea's dishonest boss, was the target, and Mandy was the bait. Mandy was already chatting with Paul, who was trying to impress her and buying drinks when another colleague came over, clearly excited. "Wow, I recognize you! You're famous!" Mandy just laughed lightly and responded playfully. They chatted briefly, and the colleague pulled out his phone to show something to Paul. Mandy laughed as I crept closer to hear better. Paul turned with a big grin. "Love your work," he said, clearly impressed. "There's a fancy event tonight. You should come." Mandy, full of energy, replied, "Ooh, that sounds fun. Can my friend Jake come too? He's my photographer. He makes me look great." Paul looked at me with doubt, probably thinking I was just a jealous friend. "Photographer?" he said with a hint of disinterest. "I don't need someone spoiling the mood." Mandy pouted and gave him a hopeful look. "But he's really good at capturing great moments." "Please?" "I'll be really nice." She beamed at him, and I saw it had a good impact. "All right, whatever," he answered, waving me off. "Just don't get in my way." I smiled to myself and raised my glass. Step one was done thanks to Mandy's quick thinking. This was going to be an interesting evening. Mandy Lewis. So this event was at a beautiful villa off the resort, with glass walls letting in the moonlight and palm trees swaying in the gentle breeze, a true paradise. Paul was excitedly leading me inside, and I followed. He didn't notice, but I could feel Jake's irritation building. "Oh my gosh, this place is amazing!" I laughed. I might have sounded a bit silly, but that's just me, right? Inside, I was aware of everything. The exits, the strong security guys, and the strange energy from the people in suits. I wasn't just here for show. I was managing this event, and tonight, these guests were my focus. The event itself was pretty calm. I took pictures with some adventurous guests and received plenty of compliments. It might surprise you, but in public, it's often women who comment on appearances, especially after a drink or two. I was talking to a middle-aged woman who clearly cared about her look when the crowd started to thin out. A man from the bar, one of Paul's colleagues, came over and led me to a side hall. I glanced at Jake, and he nodded, setting down his drink and following us. The hall was filled with important people enjoying fancy drinks and chatting about simple things, but then Paul clapped his hands like a game show host. "Time for the real fun, everyone," he announced, leading a smaller group, including Jake and me, through a side door. Inside, they took our phones, which felt a bit rude. However, we were ready. I had a small recorder hidden in my sparkly clutch, and Jake had a camera in his jacket capturing everything. We stepped into a fancy room filled with red cushions and soft lighting. The atmosphere felt like something exciting was coming. I exclaimed excitedly, "Wow, this is so much fun!" and grabbed Jake's arm, soaking in the moment. Paul spotted Andrea, Mark's wife, who looked lost, and brought her over. I felt a mix of nerves and excitement. It had been years since we saw her, and I wondered if she would recognize me. "Meet my special guest," he said with a smile, directing attention towards me. She hardly reacted, just swayed slightly. I felt a bit sorry for Mark and their kids, but we had work to do. I smiled and said, "Hi, this party's wild, right?" nudging Jake to capture this moment. Then Paul turned to me, his gaze a bit too intense. "Why don't you join us? Andrea could use a friend." He pointed at her with a smile that made me uneasy. I kept my cheerful attitude, even though I felt uncomfortable. "Oh my gosh, that sounds fun," I answered, quickly adding, "but I'm feeling a bit thirsty." I groaned and half laughed. "Fine. Let's get the files and go. Then we can talk about what's next." Mark Lewis. I sat there, shifting awkwardly in the soft chair, the light scent of coffee and old books surrounding me. Gretchen Muller's office felt like a strange, safe space, a quiet spot where I could try to take control of the mess in my life. I had called her a week before Andrea left for Hawaii, feeling deep down that something was wrong. Now, holding the evidence I gathered, I was ready to share it all. Gretchen looked serious across the desk. She had sharp cheekbones and a firm look that matched her neatly pressed suit. As she leaned in, her stern expression softened slightly when she looked at me. "Mr. Lewis, you've really put together a strong case," she said, her voice low and steady, with a subtle German accent that made each word feel important. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. "Thanks, Miss Muller. My only concern is what's best for my kids." She nodded briskly, her fingers tapping on the thick folder I had given her. "Let's break this down. You're a part-time student, working different jobs, and you're the one holding everything together for your children. That's a strong start for custody. You have records of doctor visits, school pickups, all the little things. Then there's Andrea away often, going on business trips, and working late. It's a clear pattern." She slid the folder back to me, pausing with her hand on it like she was considering its weight. "And this video?" she continued, her tone lowering. "You mentioned it came from an unknown source at her conference. It's important. Proof like this can't be ignored." My stomach twisted at the thought of that footage. I could picture it Andrea with someone else, a scene that hurt every time I thought of it. I pushed the pain aside. "She won't be back for 5 days, I said, my voice steady despite the ache. "I want her served at the airport, right when she lands." Gretchen smiled slightly, looking pleased. "Bold choice. I like it. We can make that happen. Now let's talk goals. Custody seems possible, given your role with the kids and what you've shown me. Courts in Texas often favor the mother, so we need to be thorough. As for the financial part, her actions might help us secure a better split." "What's your goal?" I took a deep breath to calm myself. "The house. I need it for the kids. They've been through so much. They deserve something stable." She frowned and tilted her head. "That's a big request, Mark. Texas splits things down the middle because of community property. If we can show she's at fault, it might help, but it's not guaranteed. We need more information. What else do you have?" I left that meeting with my thoughts all mixed up, feeling both hopeful and anxious. Jake and Mandy were due back tomorrow with whatever they had found from that hard drive. If it was as good as I hoped, it might help my case. The next few days felt long. Andrea didn't call, and I didn't reach out either. The silence was heavy, but not surprising. She was still in Hawaii, living her life, while I was here trying to figure everything out. I couldn't face her not yet, not until I had all the information. Jake arrived the next afternoon looking tired. His eyes were red and his shirt was wrinkled, but he managed a tired smile as he handed me a USB drive. "Here it is," he said, his voice rough. "Everything we got from Paul's laptop, it's all on here." I took the drive, my hands shaking a little. "Jake, I can't thank you enough." He patted my shoulder kindly. "Just use it to get the answers you need. That's all I want." I nodded, gathering my courage as I walked to my desk. I plugged in the drive, the soft click sounding louder than it should. The first video loaded, and there was Andrea with Paul nearby. I wanted to turn it off, to look away, but I needed to know. The next clip hit harder. She looked vulnerable, and the tension was clear. I couldn't tell if she was in trouble or feeling something different. Then I saw a folder labeled Accounts. My instincts kicked in. I used to be a fraud investigator, and I knew how important financial systems could be. The password could have been a problem, but I realized I didn't need to worry. Paul had been careless and saved a text file with all his passwords, including ones for online banking. It was called Secrets.txt. Spreadsheets opened up, filled with suspicious finances, kickbacks, fake companies, inflated bills. One column caught my eye, steady deposits to Andrea that were much larger than her salary. Now I understood where the extra money in her account came from. It all made sense. This isn't just her making bad choices, I whispered to myself. This is a serious crime operation, and my wife is part of it. I leaned back, my chair creaking beneath me, my mind racing. Gretchen had asked me to find some information. Well, I had it. The issue was bigger than just my marriage. What I knew could seriously hurt people, or at least take away their freedom. The hardest part was that one of those people was the mother of my children. I felt torn about what to do. The next morning, I visited Jose Goldstein. I was still trying to wrap my head around what I had found. His office was messy with papers piled high and coffee-stained mugs, but Jose was focused, cutting straight to the point. He was not an easy person, which was why I went to him. If anyone could help me with what I discovered, it was Jose. He connected the drive to his computer, his fingers moving quickly as he looked through the files. "Mark, this is important," he said, excitement in his voice. "These videos could hurt her reputation for sure, but the financial documents, those are serious issues. If this got into the right hands, your wife might face more than just a divorce." I sank into one of Jose's old chairs. The cracked and peeling upholstery matched how I felt inside. I still had feelings for Andrea, even though I was angry with her. If I shared this information, what would happen to her? Would it be better for my kids if she faced severe consequences, or should they have a mother who could see them sometimes? I couldn't decide when Jose's careless comment pushed me over the edge. "That's enough, please," I said, more like a growl than a shout. Even Jose, who often lacked empathy, seemed surprised. "Sorry, man, I just got carried away." He tried to sound apologetic, but it only showed how out of touch he was. "Just make sure this goes to the right people. I need her out of my life, out of my kids' lives." He looked at me, nodding slowly. "I'll take care of it. I have a contact at the FBI. They handle cases like this. They'll manage it from here." I let out a shaky breath, feeling a bit of the burden lift. "Thanks, man. Really?" He shrugged, already picking up his phone. "It's my job." "Go home. Try to relax. This will take time to sort out." Relax? That didn't seem possible. That night I sat alone in the dark, a glass of water sitting untouched on the table. The divorce felt like a storm looming above, dark and unavoidable. I kept scolding myself. Why hadn't I noticed what was happening? Why did I let her return to work? Why didn't I keep her away from Mags? I even wondered if my own plans had added to our problems. Was I making the right choice? For myself? For the kids? Mandy's words from the party echoed in my mind. Andrea looked lost, dancing for Paul and his clients. Had I missed something important? Was she in a difficult situation? That thought worried me. Maybe Paul and his friends had taken advantage of her. But then I remembered her actions, the money growing in her name. She made choices that crossed lines for whatever reasons she had. My focus now was on my children. Keeping them safe and giving them a chance for a normal life was all that mattered to me. I took a deep breath to strengthen my resolve. Andrea had made her choices, and I couldn't trust her anymore. Not with me, not with our kids. I needed to keep her as far away as possible, even if it meant making tough decisions. That's what I told myself as I lay awake, staring at the dark ceiling in my bedroom. Guilt weighing on me until sleep finally came. 3 days later, it was time for action. I had everything ready. The kids were with a trusted sitter, new locks shined on the house, and I had a restraining order in my back pocket. The process server was set to give the papers to Andrea at the airport. I waited at the terminal, my heart racing as I watched the busy crowd. She stepped off the plane looking flustered, pale, messy, and her eyes moving as if she sensed something was wrong. The server approached her confidently and handed her the envelope. She stopped, staring at it before opening it in a rush. "What is this?" she yelled, her voice rising above the noise of the terminal as she flipped through the papers. Paul rushed up behind her and snatched the papers from her hands. He quickly read them, his face turning serious. Before he could say anything, Andrea turned around, clearly upset. "This is your doing!" she shouted, anger in her tone. He held her wrists gently, but she jerked away, leaving him caught off guard. Security quickly moved in, separating them as her arms flew around and her voice echoed throughout the terminal. Paul winced and rubbed his hand. The server stayed back, clearly used to such scenes. I recorded the whole thing on my phone, capturing a marriage falling apart, maybe even a family. I just wished I knew who to hold responsible. Afterward, Andrea fell apart quickly. The restraining order didn't stop her. She flooded my phone with messages, voicemails piling up like old papers. One moment she would plead, "Mark, let me see the kids." And the next, she'd threaten, "You'll regret this." I saved every message, noting each violation for the lawyers. Things got worse. One night, she pounded on the front door hard enough to wake the whole neighborhood. The kids were scared upstairs while I called for help. The police arrived quickly, taking her away as she yelled, her voice fading as they left. Then came the incident at the park. I was playing catch with the kids when she showed up, her eyes wide with worry. "Mark, please talk to me," she pleaded, stepping closer. I stood in front of the kids, my voice steady. "You're not welcome here. Please leave." She grabbed my arm, urgency in her grip. "I can explain, just let me talk." I pulled away, firm in my response. "There's nothing to discuss. It's over." People around us were already calling for help, and soon the police arrived. They took her away as she struggled, tears on her face. This was it, she was being taken, and I felt powerless to stop it. A few weeks later, I received a letter from the health department. Andrea had tested positive for an illness. I wasn't shocked, but I was surprised when her parents told me she had also been found using drugs. She had been living with them for a while as her behavior worsened, and they had to take her to the hospital for help, a shadow of the daughter they once knew. That night I sat alone in the quiet house, the kids sleeping soundly upstairs. I had achieved everything: full custody, a stable home. Andrea's life was in chaos, but it didn't feel like a win. The fight was over, but the aftermath was still here, and I had to start rebuilding. The children needed stability, a life without her chaos. That was what I would create, no matter how lonely it felt right then. This was the path I had chosen for us, and I was determined to see it through. Andrea Lewis Hampton. The airplane hummed softly, a sound that settled deep inside me. I pressed my forehead against the window, the cool glass soothing my warm skin. Below, the clouds stretched endlessly, like the emptiness I felt when the effects of my medication faded away. My fingers searched my purse, feeling around for the familiar orange bottle, Xanax. I poured 2 pills into my hand and swallowed them dry. My throat burned, but I didn't mind. I needed the fog, the silence. It was the only way to keep the memories of Hawaii from taking over. That week was a mix of sunny days and frantic nights. Paul's loud voice barked orders, pushing me toward strangers with strange looks. "Make them happy, Andrea," he said, his breath heavy with alcohol. I turned to drugs to stay focused, then took pills to numb the pain. Each meeting felt lifeless. It was a show I could not leave. Somewhere in the haze, I wondered, do I even enjoy this? The thrill, the confusion, the way it blocked everything else out. Or is it just Paul's influence, his negativity clouding my mind until I can't see where he stops and I start? He's turned me into his puppet. I resented him for that. I felt the same toward Mags, who promised me freedom and fun, yet stood by as I struggled. I mostly feel angry with myself. I made decisions, one after another, until I couldn't find a way back. Mark's face comes to mind, tightening my chest. He was meant to be my support, my partner. But he didn't notice my struggles or pull me away from trouble. Maybe he was too caught up in his own life, or just too overwhelmed to see me. I wanted him to help me escape from Paul's influence. Instead, he let me slip away, and now that disappointment has turned into something deeper: resentment. I know it's not fair to blame him. These were my choices, my mistakes, but it feels easier to point the finger at him than to face the truth. The plane shakes a little and my stomach tightens. It's 5 hours until I'm home. I'll have to look Mark in the eye, hug the kids, and pretend to be the person they believe I am. I don't know how to do that anymore. The airport hits me like a shock. It's too bright, too noisy. My legs feel weak as I step off the plane, the medication clouding my mind. All I want is to get through the crowd, go home, and hide in bed. Suddenly, a man stands in front of me, holding out an envelope. "Andrea Lewis?" he asks, his tone flat. I nod, confused, and take it. I tear it open and the words jump out. Divorce papers, custody plans, a restraining order. My breath catches. Mark has made his move. He's shutting me out. Panic grips me, hot and intense. I look up and see Paul approaching with a smug smile. This is all his doing. Anger rises in me, and before I think, I step toward him, my fists clenched. "You caused this," I say, my voice shaky. He grabs my wrists, but in a moment of panic, I bite his hand. He stumbles back, and soon security rushes in, pulling me away. I kick and cry, the world swirling around me with noise and movement. Afterward, everything is a blur. I call Mark from a payphone, my voice trembling. "Please let me see the kids. I'm their mom." No response. I try again, frustration setting in. "You can't treat me like this." Still nothing. The restraining order haunts me, but I can't stop myself. I go to our house. I bang on the door, calling his name until I lose my voice. Through the window, I see Susie and Mark Jr. looking out, their faces filled with worry. The police arrive, arrest me, and take me away as I cry. Then there's the park. I see them. Mark is playing with the kids, laughing like everything is fine. I rush over, desperate to reach them. "Susie, Marky!" Mark steps in front of me, his expression serious. "You shouldn't be here," he says, moving me aside. I reach for him, pleading, but he pulls away. People watch and whisper. More officers come, and this time I don't fight back. They cuff me as I slump down, tears rolling down my face, feeling like I'm losing myself. Later, I find myself in a hospital. The smell of bleach fills the air, a clean scent that sticks to everything. I'm lying on a bed, going through detox. I'm cold and sweaty, my body craving something I can't have. My body feels sore, and my mind is tangled with guilt and painful memories. My parents sit close by, looking tired and worn out more than I remember. I feel like I'm their burden now, a broken person they have to help fix. The sadness feels heavy, making it hard to breathe while lying on this thin mattress. I think of my kids, Susie's laughter and Mark Jr., as warm hugs and the emptiness inside me grows. I've lost them. I've lost Mark. I've lost myself. I look up at the ceiling. The buzzing lights remind me of the life I used to have. It feels like there's no way back from this. The door slowly opens and a woman walks in. She is middle-aged, with soft brown hair pulled back neatly. She has a calm presence that seems unusual in this stark room. "Hello, Andrea," she says in a soothing but firm voice. "I'm Dr. Emily Thompson, your therapist. I am here to help you through this." She pulls a chair closer to my bed and sits down. My parents shift in their seats, looking back and forth between me and her. I stay quiet. What do I even say? I'm a mess, hardly the person I used to be. Dr. Thompson doesn't rush me. She just waits patiently with her hands resting in her lap. Finally, she speaks again. "Andrea, I want us to talk about what brought you here. Can you share how things got to this point?" My throat feels tight, and I can barely speak. "I'm not sure where to begin," I whisper, my voice almost lost in the noise of the lights. "Start wherever feels right," she encourages gently. "There's no pressure. Just share what comes to mind." I take a deep breath, feeling the air scratch my throat. "It all began with that business trip," I say, the memory hitting me hard. "The one where Mags and I were meant to close that big contract. It felt like too much, and I was really stressed. Mags suggested we needed to relax and charm the client. She offered me something to help. I had never done anything like that before, but I was really in a tough spot. What I didn't realize was that Mags was working with Paul to take advantage of me. It wasn't just one night, it happened over a couple of nights. The pressure kept building, and I felt myself slipping away. Mags kept urging me, and eventually, I went along with it. My mother's eyes widen, and she puts her hand over her mouth. "Oh, Andrea." I nod, feeling the shame deep inside me. "I know, Mom. It was a bad choice. I thought I could handle it, but things became a blur. I thought it was just a mistake, something I could forget. But then Paul found out." Dr. Thompson's expression gets serious. "Paul. How did he learn about this?" "I think Mags told him," I say, my voice shaking. "She must have let him in on it. There was a recording of me with the client, and Paul had it. He showed it to me and said he would tell Mark and get me fired if I didn't do what he wanted. He even offered me money for things I knew were wrong, making it clear that I had to accept it or he'd make my life miserable. My father's face becomes red, his jaw tight. That man tried to control you? We will make sure he is held responsible for this, Andrea. He can't just get away with it. Dr. Thompson leans in, her expression serious. So Paul used this to manipulate you into a bad situation. But I also sense a lot of blame in what you say. Can you share how you feel about the choices you made afterward? I close my eyes, feeling heavy under her question. I hate myself, I admit, my voice wavering. I was weak. I let him drag me in because part of me liked the escape. The draw of the substance and the money was easier than facing my life and my marriage. I was unfaithful to Mark time and again, and I didn't even try to stop it. I feel like a failure, a bad wife, a bad mother. My kids don't even have me anymore. You're not a failure, Dr. Thompson says gently. You were forced into this and manipulated, and you're dealing with tough situations. That doesn't change who you truly are. I shake my head, tears running down my cheeks. You don't understand. I've lost everything. My marriage is over. Mark won't even look at me, and I can't say I blame him. My kids are with him, and I can't even see them. My job is gone. My friends are gone. Everything I had is gone. I did this. I'm to blame. My mother reaches out, her hand shaking as she touches my arm. Sweetheart, you're still our daughter. We love you. We're here to help you through this. Help me? I say, bitterness in my voice. How can you help me when I've ruined everything? I don't deserve your love. I've made such a mess. You should be angry with me. We're not angry at you, my father replies, his voice thick with emotion. We're upset about what happened to you, but we don't hate you, Andrea. We're worried for you. We want you back. Their words cut deeper than I expected, and I can't hold back a sob. I don't know how to come back, I whisper. I look at my mistakes, and it feels like too much. I should have been honest after that trip, but I was scared. I thought he would leave me, and I couldn't handle that, so I hid the truth. I acted like everything was fine while everything was falling apart, and now it feels too late. It's not too late to change, Dr. Thompson reassures me. You've hit a low point, yes, but you can recover. It will be tough, but you can rebuild your life. How? I ask, feeling hopeless. I feel trapped, trying to get my life back. How can I fix anything? One step at a time, my mother says, holding my arm tightly. You don't have to do this alone. We will be with you. I look at her, then at my father, their faces showing a mix of worry and determination. I don't deserve you, I say quietly. I've let everyone down. I just feel so lost, like it's all pointless. Thompson's expression softens. That feeling you have is real, Andrea, and it's okay. But it's not the whole picture. You're still here, still trying, even if it doesn't feel like it. You have people who care about you, your parents, me, and the team here. We can see a way forward, even if you can't see it yet. I just want my kids, I say, my voice cracking. I'd do anything to hold them again. But I've messed that up too. We'll work on that, Dr. Thompson promises. It won't happen quickly, but if you truly commit to getting better, there's a chance to heal those connections. But first, you need to take care of yourself. My father clears his throat. We'll talk to him. He's hurting, but he wants what's best for the kids, and that means you getting better. I nod softly, feeling their hope weighing against my sadness. I feel so alone, I whisper. You're not alone, my mother says, tears flowing down her cheeks. You've got us, dear. We're family. We'll get through this together. Dr. Thompson gives a small smile. And I'll be here too, Andrea, every step. You're not in this alone. I look at them, my parents, tired but strong, and Dr. Thompson, calm and steady. A small spark of something stirs within me, faint but there. Thank you, I say, my voice shaking. I don't know what I would do without you. You don't have to find out, my father says firmly, wiping his eyes. I close my eyes, letting their words seep into my broken spirit. The heaviness of despair is still there, but for the first time, it's not all I feel. There's a sliver of something else. Maybe hope, or just the desire to keep going. It's not much, but it's enough for now. Mark Lewis, The divorce court was not what I had expected. There were no loud arguments, no crying scenes. It was just a plain room with harsh fluorescent lights and the judge's flat voice announcing the end of my marriage. Andrea wasn't there. She was in a hospital bed somewhere, getting better after her struggles. Her parents sat across from me, their faces tight with worry, avoiding my eyes. I understood. We were all affected by this, just trying to manage the aftermath. The judge's decision hit me hard. Full custody of the children, Susie and Mark Jr., is given to the petitioner, Mark Lewis, along with the marital home and most of the joint savings. I nodded, my teeth clenched. The house was ours. Mine and the kids. Andrea's hidden money, that $250,000 she had gotten with Paul, was now gone, taken by the authorities during their investigation. She had built her life on shaky ground, and it all fell apart. After the hearing, Andrea's mother approached me outside the courtroom, her hands twisted together, her voice soft and shaky. Mark, the prosecutor, is offering her a deal. She will tell everything she knows about the illegal operations involving Paul. They are talking about probation, maybe just a year if she is lucky. She is trying to get better. Her eyes looked at me, asking for something I couldn't give. Good for her, I replied without feeling. I hope she makes it for the kids' sake. It wasn't a lie, but it wasn't forgiveness either. Her parents never tried to change my mind about the divorce. Thank goodness for that. They saw the evidence and knew I had no choice. RBS was in serious trouble, and Paul was the one leading it down. The wrongdoings were deeper than I had thought. Fraud, money issues, and bribery connected to deals across state lines. After Jose gave the files to the authorities, I did my homework. Paul was facing 15 to 25 years in prison, depending on how hard the prosecutor pushed. His network of fake invoices and secret accounts had fallen apart, and the clients he once worked with were desperately trying to protect themselves. His life was ruined. Prison awaited him. His marriage was over, and his children wouldn't even talk to him. I felt no pity. He had harmed my wife in a terrible way, and now he had to face the results. Andrea's role was smaller, but still bad. She was involved with Paul. At first, she was forced into it, but she stayed for the money and the life that led her down a darker path. Despite what her parents said, I could not believe that a normal person would let their life fall apart like Andrea did. I thought she must be struggling, having some dark force pushing her toward trouble. It was the only explanation that made sense. The kids were starting to adapt to her absence. Susie's questions about where's mommy had become less frequent, and Mark Jr. wasn't waking up upset anymore. A week ago, I met with her parents and told them clearly. Supervised visits could happen one day, but only if she found a better way to live, healthy and stable. They just nodded, too tired to argue, and I meant what I said. The kids deserved a mother, but not the one she had turned into. Jake and I were close again, tighter than we had ever been as kids. Before all this, our lives had grown apart. He was with Mandy, and I was focusing on work and being a dad. The strain was real and unspoken, but when I really needed him, he was there, bringing Mandy into the mix to help me gather the truth about Andrea. We didn't talk about it much, just shared a drink now and then, but we were stronger together. He had my back, and that meant the world to me. Still, as everything settled down, I couldn't stop the questions that kept bothering me. I set things in motion the day I found that receipt and those passport stamps. I didn't talk to Andrea, didn't confront her, and didn't give her a chance to explain. Instead, I went straight to Jake, then to the lawyer I could find. I was building a case like a hunter tracking a target. But why? Was it really about protecting the kids in our life, keeping them safe from her troubles? Or was it my hurt pride, wanting a kind of justice for how she had treated me? I thought about this late at night when the house was quiet. Maybe I was someone fighting for what was right. Or maybe I was someone taking the chance to make her face the results of her actions. The truth was more complicated, a mix of both. I wanted to protect Susie and Mark Jr. from her chaos, but I also wanted her to feel some of the pain that I did. That truth hurt, but it was mine to carry. The kids were safe now, and that had to be enough. It was a lazy Saturday afternoon, the kind of day when everything slows down. I settled into my old recliner, the familiar creak bringing me comfort. A glass of sweet tea sat on the table beside me, with condensation dripping onto the wood. In the living room, Susie was sprawled on the floor, using crayons to create a colorful mess on a sheet of paper. Mark Jr. sat cross-legged beside her, enjoying a snack and sharing pieces with the dog who wagged its tail happily. "Dad, look!" Susie called out, showing her drawing, a lopsided house with a sun that looked funny. "It's us!" I grinned and leaned forward. "That's perfect, kiddo. Best house I've ever seen." Mark Jr. giggled, bits of pretzel flying as he added, "The dog's in it, too." I ruffled his hair, feeling my chest relax for the first time in months. The house was quiet, but it was a good quiet, peaceful and steady. We had made it through the rough times, and this was the other side. Just us, together, creating something new. The scars were still there and the doubts lingered, but they didn't control me. Not today. Today, it was enough to sit here with my kids, watching them color and laugh, knowing I had fought for this and won. Epilogue, Andrea Hampton. It's been 8 months since the judge made the decision, since Mark took everything. Susie, Mark Jr., the house, my life, even my last name. The box in my mind that used to keep my two lives separate is broken, spilling out all my mistakes and moments when I let myself down. I didn't lie about Hawaii, just what I was doing there, thinking that would be enough to keep me safe. What a mistake that was. Now I feel empty, a shadow moving through days that blur into nights, stuck in the memory of my old life instead of moving forward. After a video of me spread around, I lost everything. My parents say that Mark claims he didn't release it, but who else could have done it? I want to be angry at him for what he did, but deep down, I know I deserve it, and even more. The FBI took my money saying it came from illegal activities, and I lost my job before the investigations were over. The only good thing was the deal I made for my testimony. I was basically under house arrest at my parents' home and on probation for the next 3 years. It kept me out of jail, let me continue treatment, and most importantly, allowed me to visit my kids, but only under supervision. The visits were just an hour a month, but they meant everything to me. I wanted to fix some of the hurt I caused in my family, especially with my children, but it was difficult. Susie looks at me like she doesn't know me. Mark Jr. hides behind furniture or stays close to his sister. They may not understand everything, but they sense something. They know that our family's troubles are partly my fault. I feel it too. I wear my shame on my face and in my heart. No number of apologies could express the sorrow I feel, yet there is a small hope that maybe one day I can have a normal relationship with my kids. Paul is in federal prison, serving a 15-year sentence for financial wrongdoing. The FBI examined RBS after they got some files that linked to the accounts. He tried to blame me in court, but the proof against him was overwhelming. His wife divorced him, took their 3 kids, and now he's left with just a cell phone. I dislike him, but I dislike myself even more. I let him drag me down and turn me into this person. Mags, my old college friend who started this mess, is gone too. After everything fell apart, her husband found out about her mistakes. He saw a video that changed everything for them. He filed for divorce, took their son, and moved away. Mags fell apart, got involved in an investigation for her actions, and last I heard, she was on probation, working a job that makes her unhappy. We don't talk anymore. She once blamed me for ruining everything in a text, but I didn't respond. She was the one who encouraged me to take that first risky step, and I can't forgive her or myself. The company we were part of is now just a shadow of what it used to be, a reminder of business scandals. The investigations broke it apart. Executives faced consequences, many lost their jobs, and the whole business crumbled under lawsuits. Clients left, and stocks fell. By the time everything settled, it was just a name in history. My job, my bonuses, my last bit of dignity, all lost in the mess. Sometimes I see the headlines, and it feels like a sharp pain in my gut. Mark is doing well. He has the kids, a house, and a new life that I can't be a part of. Mom told me he is with someone new, an educator who is good with the children. They are a family again, rebuilt without me. I see them sometimes during my limited visits. They laugh together, and it feels like I never existed. Susie is growing up so fast, her hair is longer now. Mark Jr. has that sharp look that seems to see right through me. They don't need me anymore, and I can't blame them. I mess things up. I'm not sure how much longer I can go on. The pills help me sleep, but my dreams are filled with feelings of loss, guilt, and confusion. They wake me up feeling like I can't breathe. I have no money, no job, and no real family, just 1 hour a month with my kids. I tried to apply for a job at a diner last week, but it was too overwhelming, and I ran away. I ended up hiding in my old room for 2 days, with my mom leaving food outside the door. I know something is wrong with me. I think I've always been this way. Mags might have impressed me with her stories and lifestyle, maybe influenced me more than a friend should have. I went along with it and wasted every chance I had to save my family. That's my fault. It's a heavy burden of shame I carry. And the hardest part is the hurt I've caused everyone who loved me. My parents, Mark, our kids. There's no excuse for it. It's senseless. I felt like the world owed me something. Not much, just a little bit. But when it caught hold of me, I was too weak, stubborn, and scared to break free. I had the happiness I was searching for all along. I just couldn't see it until it was too late.